You see that guy sitting in front of a microphone discussing the ontology of bed conventions? Well, that's me. Let me tell you how I got here. By listening on to episode 3 of Davis on Davis discussing Bob and Rose.
Hello and welcome back to Davis on Davis, the podcast all about Russell T Davies and the stuff his twisted mind has come up with.
I wouldn't exactly call it twisted. Funnily enough...
Yeah, no, this isn't exactly Lynch on Lynch.
We're recording this on Russell T Davies' birthday. Did you realise that, Louis?
No, I didn't. Wow.
Yeah, and you just called the man twisted on his birthday.
Yeah, but I feel like writers love having a twisted mind. I like from the twisted mind of Stephen King. You know, it's a compliment.
But that's horror, right? You've named David Lynch and Stephen King, two people that I kind of associate with being twisted.
There are some scary Doctor Who episodes.
Yeah, but this is not the Doctor Who.
He wrote Midnight.
Yes, although funnily enough, I learned a fun fact about Midnight the other day, which I didn't know. Apparently, it was partly inspired by the Star Trek episode called Darmok. And then Russell T Davies admitted that he'd never seen the episode. It's just based on what he's heard about the episode, which is just an episode about an alien race that speak entirely in metaphors. It's not scary at all. So I didn't see the link.
No, that's good. That means you don't commit plagiarism or anything. You know, you're doing your own thing. Speaking of things with Leslie Sharp in them, we're talking about Bob and Rose today. But before we get on to that, have you done anything since we last met, Zac?
I have actually. I've really got into a new show on BBC iPlayer recently. I mean, I have also done other things and sat at home and watched telly. But I suppose this is a media podcast, and I really like telly, so I'm going to tell you about some telly. I met up with a friend the other day, and I was so excited about this new show that I'd seen. I went straight up to her, and I said, "Oh my God, I've just found the most incredible thing, and you've got to try. Oh my God, Mandy, it's amazing." And my friend turns to me and says, "Zac, I didn't know you did MDMA." Which took me by surprise, because I was in fact referring to the hit sitcom Mandy by Diane Morgan, not MDMA, which I have to point out I had to Google how to spell MDMA, because I'm not a user of such a substance. But no, the third season of Mandy's recently been dropped on the iPlayer, and I'd not seen any of it, so I watched all 3 seasons. And it's fantastic, it's hilarious, and I don't laugh at many things. I mean, I find things funny, but I'm not a laugher. Is that weird? I just don't laugh at things. And whereas I found myself laughing a lot, and it's about this character called Mandy, played by Diane Morgan, written by Diane Morgan, directed by Diane Morgan, who is kind of just a bit useless. She doesn't have a job, so she's kind of like, she goes to the job centre in quite a few episodes and ends up in weird and wacky jobs, and it's just quite funny. This is me just giving a full review now. The second season gets a bit weird because there's one episode where she goes to Mars.
Oh yeah, I know that one's got like Olga Koch in it speaking Russian. Love to see it.
Exactly. I don't think that's as funny. I think she's funniest when it's her in her flat just being banal and having crazy reactions to things. There's an excellent one in the new season where she plays her own grandmother. That one's fantastic. And then her grandmother orders a baby on the dark web.
Nice. I haven't seen the new season. I'll check it out. I think the Mars one is like, you know, when shows are like, we want to make something a bit more profound just to get it off our chests. I think that's the Mars episode.
Which is odd because these are 14-minute episodes. I'm not going to Mandy for profundity, if that's the right word.
Yeah, but that's kind of a point, isn't it? You know, of those. Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I get drunk and go clubbing, people will sometimes just assume that I'm on Mandy, I'm on MDMA, and I'm like, no, I'm just autistic. That's just what I'm like when I'm drunk. I'm sorry.
Have you done anything, or seen, or done, consumed? I don't know why I'm using all these words.
Yeah, so I was looking at press releases about sort of TV commissions and stuff, and I noticed that there's actually going to be a US adaptation of Mandy called Molly. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
No, in all actuality, I met my sister. She came to Brighton, and also I went to London. Anyway, one of the times that we were chatting, I found out about Drain Gang. So she was telling me about Drain Gang. She was telling me that a lot of people she knows listen to Drain Gang. Have you heard of Drain Gang, Zach?
No, but I think there might be some youths up my pipes. That's not a euphemism, sorry.
It's kind of a music subculture.
Right.
So it's a bit like goth,
Right.
basically, in the fact that goth is also an aesthetic as well as music. And sort of two main artists, Blade, who I'd heard of but hadn't listened to any of their music, and Young Lean, who I had heard of and actually knew more about his backstory. And I knew the song, I think it's called Ginseng 2003 or something. So much goes, bitches come and go, and it's like it's kind of emo rap. I was just like, what is this? So this is not just like a joke, but the problem is that makes me sound kind of old, but I don't get it. I just the only thing that sticks in my head when I think what have you done recently is I found out about Drain Gang. Oh, and I watched The Three Body Problem. If you're interested in sci-fi, I actually have the book in my house and I need to read it now because the TV show was good. And being like a Western adaptation of a Chinese novel, there's quite a few differences. So I reckon I'll still get a lot out of reading the book. So I'm going to do that soon.
I was about to say, I can confirm, not about Three Body Problem, because I presently don't have a Netflix subscription. So all these things are coming out on Netflix and I haven't seen them, which is really bad because I move in circles that watch a lot of telly. And so that's a massive bit of television that I'm unable to access.
No, yeah, a big part of the founding of this podcast was kind of realizing that we both, a movie podcast would feel a bit like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Yeah. We're TV people. We're
exactly.
TV. Let's embrace that.
I literally have never seen a film. I dare people to sometimes play a game. I say name a film. I can bet you a fiver that I've not seen it, which is pretty awful because I've seen a lot of TV. I was just going to say, for the listeners who invested, I'm still reading Dune. I'm like 330 pages into Dune, of my copy of Dune, which is about 560 pages. So we're getting there. I'm still going. And I've got Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, and God Emperor on Dune on my shelf in front of me, teasing me, inspiring me to keep reading. So read books.
Yes.
And watch telly, but don't watch films.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame that Duncan Idaho guy dies, though. It's a shame he's never going to come back, yeah.
It's a shame that he's actually the main character. Speaking of...
No, do the transition. What are we speaking of, Zach?
I was going to say, speaking of watching TV, I watched some great telly last night, and it was episode 3 of Bob and Rose by Russell T Davies.
Oh my god, I did exactly the same thing.
And I don't know if you wanted to spend the next hour talking about it, or we could move on to the next thing.
I think we could. I think there's some things to say. So we start off the episode like we did episode 2 with a comparative montage. We see the starts of both their days. They're both getting ready. They're both eating breakfast. Rose, where we left off, she's not moving in with Bob. And so now we see that, she did in fact go home to Carol, her mum, Trevor and his son Dean, the new family. And now she just has to kind of live with them and live around them. It's so funny because while they're getting ready for the day, she's lighting up a cigarette just right in front of the kid, Dean. Yeah,
it's interesting how at the end of the last episode, there were some big dramatic moments of Rose moving out but then refusing to move in with Andy. And this episode, rather than opening up with the boring minutiae of having to see her go back home and sort of grovel and make amends and explain herself to Andy, I nearly said Mandy there, it just sticks, it just jumps right in and you kind of figure out straight away what the status quo is with Rose. The house feels very cramped with her there.
Yeah, it seems that she's settled into this new routine. Bob seems to have a routine, but it's him living alone, which, is like how we've seen him before. So I think he eats some leftovers, looks at a newspaper, sees his mum is wearing a T-shirt that says Section 20 Hate. She's an activist who gets out and about.
She's in the Parents Against Homophobia newsletter.
Oh, right.
Which is really interesting that they have a newsletter that he has.
And he's reading it as if it's the newspaper.
And then he reads it. I think he looks at it. I think he's had it delivered probably by his mum, scoffs a little bit, and then reads the actual paper.
Okay.
I do find it funny that the acronym for Parents Against Homophobia is PA. PA.
PA. Well, doesn't she say because we say PA? She really hams up with the.
Mm-hmm.
And then to sort of continue this theme of a new routine, once they leave the door to go to work, they call each other up. They're like, should we have sex tonight? We're like, yep, and we cut straight to him having sex.
Which is a bit of a shock how quickly into the episode it happens. But you have to remind her this isn't the first time. And I think it's kind of hinted to us that this isn't even the second time either. We saw the first time on the train. But still, regardless, whilst they're in the swing of things, Bob kind of spoils the moment by going, God, this is bizarre. This is so weird. God, this is weird. And she's like, oh, you spoilt the moment. So he's still clearly... There's a bit of an emphasis on the fact that, as we'll see later in this episode, Bob isn't secretly a bisexual. This is still really... The fact that he's attracted to this one woman is still really odd to him, and he's finding this a bizarre sensation. And this is something that they sort of briefly touch upon when they're, after the fact, they are having their pillow talk, except they're eating crisps in bed, which I think is very funny.
Yeah, they talk about whether Canal Street will accept Bob. Now he's having sex with women. And then he says, oh, well, anything goes there. And in fact, this is cutting edge. And so Rose is like, wow, I've never been cutting edge. And she mentions that when she was a kid, her friends would go to the Hacienda. I'm so happy to see the Hacienda mentioned. One of my favourite movies is 24-Hour Party People. I love the band New Order. Happy Mondays also have some good hits, but if you've seen the movie, you don't get too invested in them. Hearing that mentioned, I'm like, yes, let's go.
Meanwhile, whilst all her friends were going out, Rose was at home watching the telly.
Yes, crucially, she wasn't going to the Hacienda.
No, she was watching telly. And then Bob was like, well, when I was at school, I just did my homework, which kind of creates this picture of... I don't want to say they're boring people, because they're not boring people. They're actually really entertaining and interesting people who are very funny. And that's partly why they're drawn to each other. But they do make this point that neither of them are particularly groundbreaking. So the fact that they're in this really unique scenario is really odd for both of them.
So then, presumably the next day, back at work, one of Rose's friends is asking her about, if she's still with anyone, if Andy's completely over, or if the guy that she had sex with once, which we know is Bob, if that's still happening. And she says, oh, no, there's no one. And so she invites her on a girls' night out. Some woman named Marina is back in town. Apparently this is like a big enough event that like they've got to go out, they've got to do something.
If it feels like we're going through this quite quickly, it's because the opening of this show, of this episode, is quite quick at just showing us these scenarios, just establishing this new status quo. And we get this from what happens next at Rose's workplace. Andy shows up and he's got some of her stuff from his flat. Because he didn't want to go round to her house. So he said, I'll come round to your work and bring... And apparently she's still got some of his CDs, so she offers to bring them back. And he originally is like, oh, don't bother. But she clearly knows that he cares about the CDs. But they end up sitting down and having a bit of a chat. Presumably this must be the first time that they've managed to sit down and have a chat, because Andy asks, what's going on? Why have you left me? He doesn't say those words, but clearly that's what he wanted to know. And he's tried to inquire if there was someone else. And Rose has said unequivocally, there's no one else. Is this a lie, Louis?
Well, yeah.
Because there is someone else. There's Bob. But part of me doesn't think that Rose is lying.
What, do you think she doesn't see Bob as someone else?
I feel like as gets explored later in the episode, the scenario is so confusing because there's not another straight man. She's left Andy because Bob has made her realise that she didn't want to be with Andy, but she hasn't left Andy for Bob, and she made that pretty clear at the end of the previous episode that she didn't want to move in with him. Andy asks here in this episode, is it me? Have I done something I can improve? And she says, well, it's just both of us. I mean, you're such a lovely man. And she kind of implies that there's something wrong with her. I don't feel like she's lying when she says there's no one else.
Nah, because I think, is it anyone else? No. Is there anyone else? Yes.
True. I think what's probably happening is it's all happening very, very quickly. And ideally, Rose should take some time for herself. But obviously she doesn't want to. She wants to spend time with. Isn't love a complicated game, Louis?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's Bob up to? Bob is
teaching his class about Romeo and Juliet. That he's saying, these two families, the forbidden love. As we mentioned last time, whenever you have a lesson and a teacher giving a lesson about something, it always has to relate to the plot.
Mm-hmm.
You can't not have it relate to the plot. If it's not relating to the plot, you're not doing it right. No offense, Zac.
I have a problem here. Bob asks his class, why don't the Montagues and Capulets get on? Now, unless I'm wrong, I haven't read Romeo and Juliet for a while, not since I myself was at school. There isn't an explanation within Shakespeare's text. I feel like there's other theories online, not as in theories online, but there are other sources. But within the text itself, I don't think Shakespeare's particularly interested in this. And he asks his class, why don't the families get on?
Yeah.
And no one's able to answer it.
However, what we do get after that is brilliant. Basically, someone says, "Sir, if Juliet's 15, then isn't that illegal?"
But
And then it's like, how old is Romeo? Because even if he's 15, that would still be illegal.
illegal when what Louis is referring to is the having sex, because the age of consent is 16.
Yes, sorry, yes. So they are having sex, but also then someone says, wait, they're having sex, and then like starts flipping through the book because like, oh, now he's paying attention.
Yes.
But then someone says, well, it's not, well, they don't like show him having sex. It's like poem sex. And they're like, do they have sex on stage? And I love that, like, to solve this problem, one of the students comes up with a distinction between real sex and poem sex.
Poem sex.
I'm like, you know what? Yes. It's like how I have a theory, basically, in media, sharing a cigarette with, well, two men or two women or whatever, is gayer than gay sex.
Whoa.
Like, because sex is sex, but like when you show that in media, it's the gayest thing ever. Obviously, in real life, sex is gayer than sharing a cigarette, but in media, the shared cigarette is gayer than gay sex.
Whoa, that's quite profound.
So that's cigarette sex. We've got poem sex, we've got cigarette sex, straight sex, we've got gay sex.
You know how you said this should be a metaphor? What do you think it's a metaphor for? Is it forbidden love? Is that what Romeo and Juliet, Bob and Rose?
Well, yeah, I think basically the straight woman camp and the gay man camp, you know, they're not bitter enemies, but it is star-crossed. It is unexpected.
And this theme of illegal sex between a gay man and a straight woman shouldn't happen.
Your words, not mine.
But yet it does anyway. Well, no, and it's a good thing.
Yes, we're sex positive on this podcast.
Well, now we're getting to the idea of
even straight sex.
Well, the amount we talk about it, the sex that Bob and Rose have isn't straight sex because Bob's gay. That's mine. That's how it's acceptable to show it.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Anyway,
that works.
As these students are going on about poem sex, Bob isn't listening because he looks out the window and sees his mother having arrived at the school.
Yes, Mama Gossage is in the building.
And obviously he's thinking, oh, bloody hell. And she's got one of these big, I don't know how you describe it, like a poster bag, but that's not what it's called. It's something that, you know, when I was at school, the kids that did like art would carry their work in these big, thin...
Oh, yeah, the big art sleeve.
Yes. She's got like a corporate one of those that she's carrying. So obviously Bob is thinking, oh gosh, here comes trouble. So he rushes over to the headmaster's office, where it turns out his mum has burst into the headmaster's office without an appointment, without calling forward. And she's giving her spiel about how in every class of 35 pupils, statistically speaking, there's 2 lesbians, there's 2 little gay boys, and how they're not getting the education they need. Obviously, Section 28 is a thing, but she has been through Section 28 with a fine-tooth comb. She's prepared these posters that technically don't infringe upon the law, and she's expecting a big fight, and the headmaster's like, yeah, I'll put them up in the corridor.
She's ready to play the game in front of her, not the game she wants to play, you know?
And so she kind of she walks away with her head held high, even though the headmaster's like, but make sure you send me a letter first before you just burst into my office.
Yeah, well, the headmaster is surprisingly really kind to her, he's really receptive. He's like, you know what, actually, yeah, that's all good.
Now, I've got 2 opinions on that, because Bob's mum then says, well, I did send loads of letters, but I don't get any response.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I don't know if the headmaster is maybe having saying yes just to shut her up.
Well, I think he might be. I think.
Well, I that was my first thought after she said that. But then also, is he just a nice guy? Does he know that, you know, Bob, one of his teaching staff, is gay? And actually, from the looks of it, I think some of the other male teachers in the car park looks a bit fruity. As with the substitute teacher we saw in episode 1 was as well. But is actually the headmaster of this school either an ally or a member of the community? maybe we'll see.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's also a bit complicated by sort of Section 28 and like meeting someone about this stuff. I don't know. It's all tricky. But what is funny is that like when Bob sort of enters the room while she's telling this to the headmaster, he's like really apologising to her. He's like, sorry, it's his mum, this is not the time, all that stuff. And so the headmaster is sort of like, you should have, when she finishes her pitch, he's like, you should have thought of this, Bob. Because I think sort of if he was just trying to shut her up, maybe he wouldn't say that. I don't know. It's interesting. I hope we see more of that, because that's this show is very good at sort of subverting what you expect to happen in an interaction.
I think we will.
So then, Bob decides that he needs to book a restaurant. He books a place called like Olive Grove, and actually Carol actually overhears the phone call where Rose hears about the place and he's like, oh, maybe make it a proper day, make it, a bit more romantic. And he's like, oh, I love that. And so Carol overhears this and is like, oh, okay, so Rose is seeing someone else. But the issue is that actually Holly is part of this because she told Bob to book the restaurant because there was a convention in town. The convention being on bed salesmen, I think.
Yes, the opening bit of the episode was referencing the fact that Holly said, oh, there's a big convention in town. That means all the restaurants are going to be full. What kind of a convention? Bed conventions. Do bed conventions exist? Discuss.
I feel like at least one must exist in like a business park in Kettering or something.
Well, my boyfriend went to the Ideal Home show not too long ago.
I feel like that's going to have a slightly broader scope.
But I can see, especially central Manchester. We've got the Manchester Central Convention Centre, which used to be called the GMEX, which has hosted all sorts of things.
Is he in the like home furnishing industry?
What, my boyfriend?
Yeah.
No, he just wanted a load of knickknacks.
That's fine. I respect the hustle.
Well, his mum was demonstrating to me. They got this like cloth that can soak up water really quickly. So I spilt a glass of water on the carpet. So that they could demonstrate.
And you should have spilt it on maybe a hard floor, like a kitchen floor.
Well, I didn't do it on. I did do it by accident, but then they were so excited. Everyone was so. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry," and they were like, "No, this is fantastic. We can go get our new squeezy cloth."
Okay, did the squeezy cloth work?
Yeah, it was all right. I think his mum bought it as a sort of thinking it was a miracle cure, and it was just a cloth.
Okay. Brought into the hype then.
Yeah. This has been a teaser for my home knickknacks podcast.
Yes, what you're doing with your boyfriend.
We now do our return to our scheduled programming.
So we wonder, why did Holly need Bob to book a restaurant? Well, she decides to basically phone up all the restaurants in central Manchester and ask, like, oh, hello, I've forgotten a book. I think there was a booking for a Gossage. Sorry, I'm Gossage. I guess she's maybe pretending to be Bob's wife in that case. And I've completely forgotten. I've misplaced my notes, forgotten everything. I just want to double check for the booking. Yada yada yada. There's like a montage of her doing this, and we hear the lovely wistful theme music over that. Even though, why is there the nice music when she has gone full stalker mode? Like this is crossed over fully into stalking. And so eventually she finds it and she's like, okay, great, 8:30, wonderful, thank you so much, I'll be there, so that she can also book a table and go there. And so to create an alibi for why she might be at a restaurant, she invites her dad along. Her dad, we're going to get to her dad because
we are.
He has so little screen time, and yet you get so much out of it.
Oh, we do. On my notes on that little montage scene, you talked about the juxtaposition of the theme music, the what adjective did you use to describe the theme music?
Wistful,
and the weird stalker vibes of that montage.
Yeah.
I also thought the visual tone of that scene, very dingy. Her apartment's very dark. There's rubbish everywhere. Well, rubbish, but sort of like clutter in her house. It's very dark and claustrophobic, I think, those scenes. And also she's quite funny in the excuses she comes up with. She says, oh, I've completely forgotten the timing. Yeah, sorry, it's a medical condition that I've got that causes me to forget my bookings. Yeah, that's all I had to say. You described it very well, Louis.
Yeah, good, yeah. So anyway, now we're at the restaurant, and Holly and her dad are actually already there when Bob arrives, and Rose is already there. So Bob arrives, Rose is like, "Oh, am I late?" Rose is like, "Nah, I just arrived early." And then when they're being led to their table is right next to Holly's, because obviously if she's booking a table, she's able to do that. And they're like, "Oh my god, this is crazy!"
I don't think she booked a table, because she couldn't have booked a table because she was on the phone pretending to be Bob.
Okay.
So she just did a walk-in because, Louis, the bed convention doesn't exist.
Well, no,
it's a random weekday night. She didn't need to book. And so when Bob and Rose walk in and they find that the restaurant isn't full, Holly goes, "Oh no, the bed people must have gone to bed." And that's the kind of award-winning dialogue that you can expect from the master Russell T Davies.
Yes, if only this was a 30-minute slot sitcom,
Because it is, this moment is fantastic, because you do have Bob and, like, I would not know how I would write a couple walking into a restaurant and being completely blindsided by someone you see, because as a viewer, you immediately go, "Oh God, Holly, there's something very wrong with you. This is weird. Why doesn't Bob suspect something?" But obviously Bob's not going to suspect anything, because it's a complete total coincidence, because how would she know what restaurant he booked?
No, yeah, how would she know?
But clearly the waiter tries to sit Bob and Rose at a table. It's not the next table, but it's like a table diagonally, so that they'd almost be close enough to hear each other's conversations. Bob then goes, "Do you have any booths?" Which is a very clever move, and also a legitimate thing that people ask in restaurants all the time when being sat. Again, so I think that's really clever dialogue.
Yeah, and it's a posh, fancy booth.
And Rose, so Holly knew who Rose was, so she was able to greet Rose.
But like, "You must be Rose," as if she hasn't seen her before.
Yes, Rose doesn't know that Holly came and stalked her in her office. She wouldn't have remembered seeing her face. So Rose and Bob have this moment where Rose is like, "Well, I've not told anyone about this." And Bob goes, "Well, I just told Holly, she's my best friend." At which point Holly runs over, and this made my flesh crawl. This is probably the episode that made me go, "Okay, Holly, you are a weirdo." And this is a great narrative that RTD has painted around Holly. She comes over asking if she should leave, if it's weird, because obviously she doesn't want. This is all part of her game. This is part of her play.
Yeah.
And she spins this whole yarn about her dad's tax bill, and I thought she was going to say, "Oh, my dad's had this massive tax return throughout celebrating," but no, it's the other way around. He's got this massive tax bill, so she's taking him out to make him feel better.
But actually, it was like, "Oh, there was a tax bill scare," and it turns out that, like, no, actually doesn't need to pay that, I think it is.
And then we see how her dad responds. He's really blunt with her. He just sort of takes things as they are, and he's sort of not really interested in making conversation. What have you got to say about Holly's dad, Louis?
So basically, he says there's a draft, and she's like, "Do you want to move?" And he's like, "No, I just said there's a draft. Do you want me to repeat it?" Because, if they moved, then they could be close to Bob.
Mm-hmm.
You know how it is.
Yeah.
This is all part of her plan. And I think, does he see through this? Does he know what she's kind of doing? Does she know that she's never generous? She's always pretending to cater to someone else's desires when she can use it to get her own desires, like, "Oh, well, I want to move because my dad thinks there's a draft, not because I want to move."
Yeah.
In that sense, maybe he's seeing through her manipulation tactics. But also, he's incredibly stern, incredibly condescending, as you say, blunt. Did she make him like this, or did he make her like that? That is what I want to know.
Oh, that's a chicken and the egg question, Louis. I can't possibly answer.
Yeah, even though it's obviously the egg, because birds existed before chickens specifically, but whether dinosaurs existed before.
All I'm going to say is spin-off. I need a spin-off. I need a Holly's dad spin-off where he just goes into places and is very, very literal.
But also, I mean, like, when, he sees Holly, like, for example, she says to Rose that, this restaurant, I always go here, and Bob never listens when I say that I always go here. So that's why it's a coincidence that I'm also here, because I always go here and Bob's just coming here. Does he see that and know that she's lying there? You know, that's gaslight gatekeep girl boss. Like, does Bob know that, like, no, she doesn't ever talk about the olive grove? Like, that's... Or maybe she does, just so that she'll plant the idea in his mind. It's... But that would contradict the phoning up sequence.
Would,
so, yeah,
yes,
so, like,
no.
when she tells these kind of, you know, gaslighty lies, is Bob successfully gaslit? And the dad isn't gaslit? Because the dad would know if she always talked about this restaurant, I reckon.
Well, no, because do you think she's? I don't think she's always talking to her dad. I think both her dad and Bob are disinterested and not listening to her. I don't think the dad sees through anything. I think he's just like, I'm at a rest. I think he's one of those people that goes to a restaurant because he wants to eat food. Whereas I like a restaurant should be an experience. I like going in, enjoying the aesthetic, enjoying the ambience, enjoying the conversation. You know, I like it to be a full multi-hour experience. Other people just like, oh, there's food, let me just eat and leave. I just think he's a simple man, Holly's dad. He just wants what he wants.
Okay.
And I think Bob is more interested in sitting down with Rose and having some private time.
Yes. Anyway, now the real action starts, because Andy, so he goes to Rose's house. You know, Trevor and Carol are chatting to him, and they're saying, "Oh, we're sorry about Rose. She's mad. She's crazy. You know, you don't deserve this." And then he asks them, like, you know, is there someone? And obviously Carol suspects there might be, and Trevor kind of because she's feeling unsure. Trevor convinces her to, you know, tell Andy what she knows and what she's overheard, and the fact that she knows what the restaurant is, but she doesn't know what the actual relationship between Rose and this mysterious guy is. But she can guess that it's romantic.
And she knows that there's a Bob. She knows the name Bob.
Yeah.
And we know this because she, on the previous episode, she went through the contacts on Rose's phone. So she knows there's a Bob. And she saw the note by the phone in the hallway that had the name of the restaurant. So Trevor is now armed with a restaurant name and a man's name.
So Andy heads off there, yeah. Meanwhile, Rose sees Holly going to the toilet and decides to join her in the loo to have a little chat. And so she kind of asks her, you know, Bob's very nice. Am I really the first woman? Is this really what's going on? You see this and you think, ooh, what's Holly going to say? Because Holly could really mess this up. But that would blow her cover, because then Bob would know. Like, if Rose comes out of the bathroom and is suddenly completely madly furious at him, and he's like, why? And she tells him that's why, then he's going to know that Holly told some lies. And so Holly says, no. Bob is a good man. You are the first. He doesn't lie. And she's like, oh, thank you. That's very reassuring. But while she's in the toilet, Andy rocks up and says, Bob, I presume.
It's aggressive, but not aggressive, if that makes sense. It's
confrontational.
It's a heterosexual confidence with which he sees a man on his own in a restaurant and just goes, Bob. Because part of me was hoping, oh gosh, Rose is in the loo, which means hopefully Trevor will come into the restaurant and therefore not be able to identify who's Bob because he won't see Rose.
Oh my god, Holly's dad is also sitting alone.
Do we not? Is there a deleted scene where he goes up to Holly's dad and goes, Bob? And then Holly's dad just goes very bluntly and just points over to Bob. I wish that's not actually in the show, guys.
No, that'd be funny. Anyway, Bob manages to convince Trevor that he is gay. And, you know, since he is gay, since he does identify as gay, not too hard, he just says, look, that's the best arse in this restaurant. Even you as a straight man cannot deny that fact. However, I was able to pick it up in 0.2 seconds because I'm gay.
To be honest,
once again, there's this conflation between arse loving and gay in general, which I think Russell needs to maybe
lay off.
Realise that there's a bit of a difference, and you are both of them. Power to you, but you know,
because I'm not convinced at all by this argument. I almost thought when Bob goes, "Oh, do you want me to prove that I'm gay?" he was going to like stand up and try and snog Andy, which I don't think would go down well at all. But how do you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the classic joke with proving you're gay is offering to suck the other man's dick, and then they're like, because that will make them look dumb. Like, if normally you just have to say, do you want me to prove it? And then that's kind of end of argument, because they realise how stupid it is to, like, the only thing you can say at that point is, no, I believe you, because of the implication.
If only Bob had brought his wallet, he could have brought out his gay card. But alas, he obviously forgot it at home. Yeah, this is an interesting conversation, because the conversation is, how long has it been going on? I think Bob kind of shuts Andy down with saying, oh, we've only been I'm gay, we've only been hanging out for a couple of days. And then Rose comes out and immediately is like, oh shit.
Oh shit. And she's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. It just started a couple of days back. And then Bob is like, yeah, me being gay is... And she's like, yes, he's gay.
It's gay Bob. She goes, yes, it's gay Bob's only been gay for a couple of days. And obviously Andy sees this sort of attempt to cover up. This isn't a 30-minute sitcom. This is a proper 45-minute ITV drama. So Andy doesn't suffer fools gladly and goes, well, have you slept with him? Rose goes, no, which is a lie. I'm not going to try and argue that because Bob's gay that they haven't had sex. I'm not going to try and add that. Andy's not having any of this.
No, yeah, I think Rose is lying. You know, there is someone else. She has had sex with him. Those are both lies.
So Andy storms out of the restaurant. Rose follows, but she does ask for the bill first. She's not doing a runner. And then I think we don't see it, but Holly follows pretty soon after.
Oh, yes.
Outside, we have this confrontation where Rose is trying to calm Andy down and say, let's just go to the pub. We'll talk this out. I'll explain everything. Then Bob comes out. Andy shoves Bob. And then Bob has this whole moment where Rose is trying to explain the scenario and saying, oh, I came round to his house. I thought he was gay. I thought it was a safe space, but one thing led to another. He didn't know. Turns out he's bisexual. And then Bob says, I'm not bisexual. And he has this whole moment.
Well, but he's like, but I am gay. And she's like, well, yeah, I mean, you thought you were gay, and then it turned out you were. It's like, no, nothing turned out. I was born gay, I'm gay now, I'll die gay.
And I'll have a gay tombstone. Oh my God, what's the...
Born This Way by Lady Gaga, is that what you're thinking of?
No, okay, so the full quote. I was born gay, I am gay, I'll die gay, and I'll have a gay gravestone. Rose's response is, what am I, a passing hole? And then Bob goes, oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, Bob and Andy are both like, oh, come on.
That made me laugh out loud. And as I've said before, there are very few things that made me laugh out loud. And that's really well directed, that scene.
It's such like an obscene thing to say, but like they both sort of snap out of their rage for a moment, like, come on, Rose.
But Bob it completely refuses to be bisexual. Now, this is where Bob and Rose has gained a little bit of controversy when it came out. This statement about bisexual identity, because a lot of people have kind of thought that it's slightly biphobic, which I disagree, almost suggesting that this isn't bisexuality, whereas a lot of people will argue that it is, and this is that sort of biphobia within the gay community, and by sort of suggesting that bisexuality isn't real of some kind. I actually think this is even more forward thinking, where sexuality is so nuanced and we try and add these labels, and Bob has found a label that identifies him. And this is not 2001 thinking, by the way. This is very 2024 thinking that I'm doing here. But Bob has kind of found a label that he really strongly identifies with, which is being gay. He loves men. He's never thought about women. But then there's this one woman, which means, okay, so his sexuality is a little bit more nuanced. It isn't 100% men. You know, it's 99.999 men and 0.0001% Rose. For him, that doesn't change his label. And I think this is quite before its time in the way that it's dealing with labels and identities. And I think that's quite profound that Bob is able to stand up for his own identity and not let someone else put a label on him, least of all a straight person. So I think this is a great moment. Good
for him. So Andy is really angry, and Bob is like, you're going to hit me. And he's like, no, I'm not going to hit you because you're gay. He's like, well, you can't hit a gay person. I mean, I would say, well, maybe you can't hit a gay person without it being a hate crime. So maybe good call on Andy's part there. But eventually he goes Andy into sort of slapping him. And then he's like, a slap? Wow, you really are a puff.
Whoa.
And Rose is so mad at like Bob is sort of provoking Andy like this. And it is like, yeah, like, come on, Bob, this is not Andy shouldn't be making this between you and Andy, and you shouldn't be making this between you and Andy either. This is between you and Rose as individuals.
Because it is funny that this statement of identity that we get from Bob, he is making the scenario a little bit about himself, but he's being proud and trying to stand up for who he is and not let Rose say things for him. Andy, overwhelmed by the whole scenario after slapping Bob, just breaks down sobbing, proper ugly crying.
Well, and in the words of Holly's dad, are we going now? The scene ends.
Yeah, Rose tells Bob, "You just go be gay," which I think we're up to 4 on the Rose being mildly homophobic with her microaggressions. You just go be gay. So the scene ends and Holly ends up back at Bob's and they're boozing on a school night.
Yes, and they're saying, God, people suck, everyone sucks, this sucked tonight, I hate this. And then Bob is like, Bob takes a chance to complain about Sanjay, who was this guy from, what was it, Streatham, Clapham, Hackney, somewhere in London. And Sanjay wanted him to wear a nappy and just ridiculous, one-off like bits. It's real world building. Just there's all these people and they all suck.
That moment happens when Holly and Bob basically they're chatting, and because they're boozing, Bob's let Holly stay over, and they're sort of there. He's having this conversation in bed, and he's ready to go to sleep, and he's drifting off, and Holly is staring lovingly at him, and there's no denying the fact that Holly is in love with her best friend Bob.
No, yeah, and like she's like asking like, wow, maybe you've turned, maybe you might want to have sex with women now, and he's like, that'd be mad, that'd be crazy. But then she says like, God, but if you jumped on me, I'd punch you, but also I'm so drunk that actually I probably wouldn't even do anything. And it's like
cringeworthy, but like in a good way.
It's well written cringe, but like she wants him so bad, and she's doing the what if we fucked. Just kidding, unless.
I've seen this video before, I think. In complete contrast, Rose's night is ending in the kitchen smoking when Trevor comes down to get something out of the...
Well, before that, she goes to Andy to sort of comfort him, and that's where he like finally says goodbye to her. So it seems like Andy is now kind of officially out of the picture.
Yeah, and she says this to Trevor when she's smoking in the kitchen. Trevor comes down. She says there's no chance of that relationship ever again. And Trevor's like, well, you'll get back on your feet. And in the meantime, we'll have fun having you here. And then he does something really weird. And he puts his hand on Rose's knee and says, anyway, the benefit of having you here is I know how beautiful your mother used to be. And then he walks away.
Yeah, so creepy. But also, before groping her, Trevor tells Rose, so long as your mother's happy, she is priority number one in terms of their living situation. It's about Carol. If he has to live with her, then that's fine, as long as Carol knows she's safe and whatnot. But earlier, when Andy visited, he said, I am not remotely happy living like this. So very stern. So, he's sort of telling Carol, I want Rose to find somewhere else. But then he's telling Rose, well, it's all about Carol. So interesting bit of manipulation there.
The following morning, Rose decides, she'll do Trevor a favour because she's such a nice person. She'll take Dean to school. Obviously, she's got an ulterior motive. She's not trying to do Trevor a favour. And she is trying to ask Dean if he has any debts. Now, you remember from last episode, there was a hint from the guy that was helping Trevor move him into the house that Trevor was skint for some mysterious reason. And Rose is trying to push Dean about this. And Dean's a teenage boy. He's in year 7. He's 11. He doesn't really know what's going on. And apparently Trevor has been printing stuff off the internet, but it's not been working.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what does that mean? Was it illegal content? What is printing stuff off the internet? Who's out here printing stuff off the internet?
Well, I print stuff off the internet all the time, thank you very much.
Well, yeah, but you don't do it for business.
Or do I? No, I do it solely for pleasure.
You just hand out pages of like tweets to elderly people who can't access the internet. You know?
I print off Wikipedia pages. No, I don't. That's my boyfriend who does that.
Wait, really?
No, one of his hobbies is reading Wikipedia before bed. He's perfectly sane. She then asked, Rose then asked Dean about Mr. Gossage. She met one of his teachers the other night, and he says, yeah, I know him. And he goes, oh yeah, he's going out with that physics teacher, Mrs. What's-her-face, which I think is
No, but he says he's a bit of a puff, and he's going out with Miss Vance.
Which is a funny detail, because you would, as a kid, presume that a man and a woman teacher spending time together.
Yes. Even if a man was a puff, you wouldn't in your mind switch it to the gay bestie dynamic. You'd still think they were going out just because you don't really know what puff means.
So Rose gets to school, drops off Dean. Dean's staying with his mum tonight, so she offers to pick him up, but he doesn't need it. And then we see Bob's perspective of the scene. He sees Dean. Now, he had been told at dinner last night by Rose that Trevor's son, Dean, went to the school, so he sees Dean Gads. What I think is really funny is, so Dean's last name is Gads. Presume Trevor's last name is Gads. The only context I've ever heard the word Gads before is Gads was the name of my drama society when I was at uni that I was president of.
Wow.
So that made me really chuckle. We were Girton Amateur Dramatic Society.
I was going to say, if you know your colleges, you can deduce which one, but you've said it now. So
yes, but actually, funnily enough, Louis, I don't think we've not told the people of this podcast what university you went to, which I think is quite impressive, because apparently I talk about it a lot. So they wouldn't know what you're on about by colleges.
Yeah, so we both went to the University of Cambridge, but funnily enough, because of pandemic stuff, we only met like once.
I think was it more than I remember. I have a memory of meeting you once.
Actually, I saw you in a play once, so that half counts.
And now you're my best friend. That's how you knew who I was. Anyway, we then get to like the sort of the final. I almost want to say the final act of the episode. It's not really an act, but it's the final section where Bob and Rose are both separately going out. We finally see that girls' night out.
No, yeah, from now on, this is very visual storytelling, not a lot of dialogue. It's always like snippets. It's all going to be like snippets of conversation, right in the action. It's time for the aforementioned girls' night out. And Bob's also out on the town, but that's more common occurrence, so,
He's not for the last couple of days. He sort of...
No, you're right. This is his return.
He goes to see his old pals who we've met before and says, look, I'm back, everyone. And they go to Babylon. Meanwhile, the girls go out, including our Donna, as in Donna from... the actress who played Donna in Chris. I can't remember her character name in this episode. I said it last episode.
I love that Babylon is now actually seen in the flesh. But it's not like the same set as in Queer as Folk.
No.
So this would be set in a different universe then.
Yes, also because it has to be set in a different universe because of Donna.
No, we said that it could be set a few years later.
But she has a different name in the credits.
Oh, we know what her name is now. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't think her name said on screen. Oh, I don't know. The RTDCU, it hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. There's a load of sort of details that I suppose that as you said...
Yeah, contrasts. At the door, there's like, the straight club is like, no jeans and trainers, strict dress code. But the gay club, they see someone going in with like short booty pants and they're like, love it, boys,
Yeah.
There's always contrasts.
I'm just picking out just details that I liked. Bob, this guy, I say Bob gets chatting to a guy. This guy ends up talking at Bob. And essentially, I've said he recites a proto-grinder profile.
No, literally.
And he's like, if we're just doing vanilla, I'm 80% top, 20% bottom. What does that mean?
Or you get top, but I bottom for the right person,
Well, he's statistically counted every time he topped and every time he bottomed, and he's come up with this 80-20 ratio.
And he's like, what kind of plays he does,
It's genuinely... It makes me understand the digital gay landscape more now that it seems this exists in person before.
It got codified. No, it's like how the earliest video games were really complex board games put into a computer, which makes sense because you go from having a massive, massive rule book with lots of little technicalities to just letting the computer do all that for you, It's the natural progression. And Grindr was one of the first, I think it was like 2004 or something. It's really old, actually. Like it was like a website. Hi, quick correction. Grindr was actually launched as an app in 2009, which is still an early adopter, but in 3 years it'll be old enough to go on Grindr.
What website did Stuart go on to? I can't remember. Was it like
It was Gay Manchester Sex.
Gay Manchester Sex? Sorry,
because Gay Sex in Manchester was taken. And there's a bit in the bathrooms, so we see the toilets, the gay toilets. A guy is crying, saying like, "I hate him, and then we cut to the girls' night out straight club toilets. A woman is saying like, I love him, you know, and they're both kind of crying. There's all these parallels.
There's also a guy dressed as a rabbit, and the rugby club lads in there. There's all sorts of details.
And Donna starts talking to him, and at first he's just talking about sort of what his business is doing and how it's kind of expanding and how that'll depend on the decision around the adoption of the euro. And I realised, God, we should have adopted the euro. Like, we'd have to deal with the problems of the euro, but it would have made a Brexit referendum less likely. I just want to see what would have happened. Also, because in the Mighty Boosh, they use euros just to look a bit funky, you know? It's like, you know what? Yeah, let's just do that.
No, this is why when you go clubbing, people think you're on MDMA. No, but the thing that this has been leaning up to is a scene where we see Rose's internal monologue and also Bob's internal monologue. And if you're interested, this scene does actually exist on YouTube. I saw this scene a couple of years ago. If you like look up Bob and Rose, there's a scene called like The Rules, because Rose's revelation is that all the men in the club are Andy. Andy is everywhere and everywhere is Andy. She's left Andy looking for something better, only to find that there is nothing better. And then Bob's revelation is about the rules of being gay.
He looks at a really attractive guy and is like, I can't look at him for too long. You know, he's way out of my league. That's the rules. And then a less attractive guy is looking at him and he's like, stop staring at me. Because he looks at him too long. He's like, stop staring at me. You know, but don't you know the rules? I'm out of your league. Bob is in the middle. There's someone at the bottom, someone at the top. And then in front of his eyes, Mr. Top Tier and Mr. Bottom Tier start making out.
It's crazy.
The rules have changed. So we get the internal monologue. Why are they introducing this in episode 3 suddenly?
I think it's
quite out of the blue.
Is it the best way of telling this particular story?
Yeah, I think it is. If it was a bit planted before as like a seed, maybe. I don't know. It suddenly goes all peep show, especially with like doing the really like neurotic inner monologues of like, oh my God, they're all Andy, and don't you know the rules? Does no one know about the rules anymore? It's like, that's so Mark Corrigan. They've scrapped the rules and no one told me. Like,
I think David Mitchell should have been cast as Bob, you know? Can you imagine? Sorry.
And yeah, also I'm pretty sure the guy looking at Bob, the you know, Mr. Bottom Tier, is the guy from the Rainbow Rhythms episode of Peep Show.
No, I can't remember.
Yeah, also, sorry, I've got no head.
Yes, I remember that show.
Hi, just jumping in again to say that that's categorically not true. I am just spreading misinformation on the internet. Actually, before we leave a club, I want to mention one last thing. There's a guy who, in a thick Mancunian accent, tells the girls that, oh, he's not from the UK. I flew in from Holland this morning. And then a woman is like, oh, well, do you speak Holland? I was like, yes, like the source, they speak Hollandaise, yeah.
Speaking of thick Mancunian accents, I should mention on the podcast, we recently passed the 25th anniversary of Queer as Folk. That made me think of the thick Mancunian accent because I think of Nathan's thick accent in that. British GQ recently released a massive article, which is an oral history of Queer as Folk, which speaks to Nicola Schindler, Russell T Davies, a load of the actors. They talk about the Mancunian accent in there. Highly recommend, if anyone's been listening to the podcast and hasn't read the article. It was out middle of April. I was going to say like it was out a week ago, but that won't mean anything to people listening to this podcast. So it's on British GQ, an oral history of Queer as Folk. Can't recommend that article enough if you've been listening to this podcast and have been interested in the stuff we've been discussing. But yeah, back to Bob and Rose.
So after having this realization, they both leave the club and they both just start walking. And I think the idea is that fate draws them together. Once they sort of see each other on the street, they start running to each other. But obviously they wouldn't know where each other are.
I'm going to level with you. Like, Manchester's not actually that big. If you go out in the city centre of Manchester, it ain't that big, right? All you Londoners thinking it, that's all I'm going to say. Also, it's suspend your disbelief, people.
But that's what I'm saying, is I'm saying it's about fate drawing them together. I'm saying it's about the universe not letting them stay apart too long. Like, that's why they spot each other is that, like, you know, they're just meant to be together.
Yeah, and then we sort of see that they run towards each other, and then it cuts to them going home together, snogging for a night of passion.
Yes, getting into a house, and then they have a little chat about what they're actually going to do now.
And they're going to give it a go, boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yes.
Bob is like, oh, I've never had girlfriend. Oh gosh, that's a bit, ooh. So Rose is like, well, we can just call each other lovers. And then they have this they decide that they're going to do this properly. They're going to meet each other's friends, meet each other's parents. And then I think, which is the most important part, Rose tells Bob, I'm not going to go out with you just because you're fed up of the others. Just because, you know, you've been fucked over by a load of gay guys doesn't mean now you're just going to go out with me because it's easier to go out with a woman. And Bob's response is, well, likewise. You know, I'm not going to go out with you just because you're fed up of all the straight men that you need, you know, a gay man. Which makes me think there's an Adult Swim Robot Chicken sketch about how, you know, every woman's dream man is actually a gay man.
Is that a real sketch?
That's why I said it.
I thought Robot Chicken was just like pop culture references, you know, because it's all figurines, so they do like Star Wars and Buffy Vampire Slayer and stuff like that.
I'll find it. I think it might be a Barbie thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Or maybe it's not Robot. Anyway.
There's a college humour which is basically some gay people saying, hey, if you don't let us get married, we will steal your girlfriends.
Oh, yes, I remember that one. The last bit of the episode is Bob telling Rose, that's enough talking for now. Cut to credits.
Good advice, Bob. Yeah, well done for cutting me off there. And once again, we get the really dramatic cut to the end credits. Although I think in episode 2 and 1, it was maybe more abrupt. This one's slightly less abrupt. Also, when they're doing the internal monologue thing, we once again hear the theme music while they're in the club. And I'm like, I know that like you want to maybe have something a bit mellow so we can hear what they're saying. I feel like it should pertain a bit more to the club stuff. And I wonder, like, every time we hear the theme music, is that the licensing thing? Is that there was originally some other music, but now we're hearing the lovely theme music, even when Holly is stalking Bob, even when they're in the club, but we hear the lovely theme music? That's my question.
Maybe. I know, it might be worth saying, I don't know if we said it before, the music isn't composed by Murray Gold.
Oh, right, yeah, no, yeah.
But now I'm just saying, I'm trying to remember who composed Beyond the Credits. I'll need to check. I'll bring it to the next episode. I was just trying to remember who actually the composer was, because it's a lovely theme tune.
Sega Nakanola.
If only.
I can only think of two. I need to learn more TV composers. You know,
there's quite. I've got my favourites who I'd want to be the next Doctor Who composer.
I think everyone's focused on the film composers. You know, Ennio Morricone, Hans Zimmer.
There's Natalie Holt. It's a British television composer. Most famously did the Loki series for Disney Plus. American composer Bear McCreary, who on Spotify, Murray Gold's bio says Murray Gold is the British Bear McCreary. You've got the guy who did Game of Thrones, who recently did the Fallout series. Oh my God, the guy who did the Only Murders in... Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just showing off now. I listen to a lot of TV soundtracks on Spotify.
Well, in that case, that brings us to the end of Bob and Rose, episode 3. We're halfway through the series now.
Woohoo!
Let's see if the second half, let's see where it goes. Let's see if it keeps off the sort of incredibly good, like, you know, low-key character drama that we love to see. You know, this is about people. This is not about explosions, or anything like that. This is just about people.
You don't know what happens in the season finale yet.
Anyway, any final remarks on this episode?
Again, every time I sit down and watch Bob and Rose, I just lament for the fact that it's not more widely available, because it's fantastic, and I think these are fantastic characters, and I'm so invested in what happens next.
Brilliant.
Sorry, I must be a broken record, but I love this show.
Hey, I love it too, and we hope that if you're able to find it, you love it, and if you can't find it, you can enjoy us talking about it and just really spreading the love. Anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of Davis on Davis. You can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Louis on Air and Twitter at Louis on the Air. Zach, do you have anything to plug?
My ears from all this yapping. That's my joke.
It's actually one of our shortest episodes, but that's fine. Anyway, join us in 2 weeks' time for more Bob and Rose. But until then, keep yourself safe.
Bye-bye.
Use protection.